Thank you. We'll call a meeting to order at 5:31. If we would just stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, at this time, I would look for a motion for a vote to go into closed session for discussion and/or action regarding those items of business exempt from open meetings under general laws of Rhode Island, RIGL 42-46-5, A1, A2, A4, A8, and A9.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. We're in executive session. Thank you. We'll return to open session. First thing I'll be looking for is a motion for a vote to seal the minutes of executive session.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. There were no votes taken in executive session. The next item would be recognitions. This would be Mr. Kane. Am I correct? Right?
Should we
Mr.
wait?
Kane, I see you. 30 seconds. Okay.
All right.
I'd sing, but no one would want to hear that. Okay. You did that. You did that. You got it. So, the recognition will be to Mr. Chris Bianco and his student Josh Howard for winning a gold medal for marine servicing in Atlanta at the Skills USA Nationals, which is a pretty big deal.
And here comes Josh.
He's such a good kid, he didn't want to park illegally. I told him to park illegally. You guys might as well come on up.
Yay.
So as you know, we came before you probably a little over a month ago. We had a great group of students going out to Atlanta to compete in nationals. Just to represent Rhode Island on behalf of the center is a huge honor. But we had one student this year who stood out among the rest. Josh is he's a humble guy. He's very soft-spoken. My wife had him for English and said, wow, if it couldn't happen to a nicer guy. He's just that type of kid, just puts his head down, does the work that's required, always willing to lend a hand, always willing to help his classmates. So Josh, as a director, you make my job easy, so I want to thank you for that. But I didn't want to recognize Josh without recognizing Chris Bianco as well. Chris and I have worked together. I think we've been in Warwick about the same amount of time, about close to 30 years now. I think for about 17 of those, we happened to work together when Vets was a high school all the way up. And Chris has this reputation for being a super tough guy. Students will tell you that, but in reality, he is a tough guy, but he's a teddy bear. He helps these kids out. He's always in their corner. Super knowledgeable, a guy that can fix just about anything, but just happens to excel with the welding, with the marine servicing technology. So that's why we're here tonight, just to recognize these two individuals, because you're what we hope kids aspire to, and Chris, personally, the same thing for teaching. You're outstanding. So, Chris, I'm going to give you the opportunity to say a little bit more about Josh. Here's your certificate.
This is mine or Josh's?
This is Josh's.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Hi, how are you?
Hi.
So just to speak for just a quick moment about Josh. Josh came to me as a sophomore after going through exploratory. He had already known what he wanted to do. He wanted to do marine trades. He has a passion for the water. He's always sailing or boating or fishing or something with himself and his dad and their family and friends and whatnot. Josh is a kid that competed as a sophomore in the Marine Service contest at the state level for Skills USA. Honestly, he didn't even place. He ran into a couple of stumbling blocks during the contest, but he came back the following year as a junior and he won the state contest. Competed in Atlanta as a junior, got ninth or 8th, I forgot. Ninth place as a junior. Came back again this year, state contest, won again as a senior, which was outstanding. And Josh and I had a talk after the state contest, and I said, look, you can really do something out of nationals. Josh is a student, and I don't say it to belittle him because he knows this, but he has an IEP. He stumbles with some things. He takes longer to process with some stuff, and we've had these conversations. But I also told him that with the way that he processes things, he is much better or more adept, at being able to look at these technical standards that they have and the processes and the procedures and really analyze them, and understand what they want and give them what they want. So Josh is a kid that when seniors were done, he was in every day with the underclassmen. He would come in the morning, and stay for the entire school day, and then he'd leave at the end of the day. I mean, there were sometimes, I guess I'm ashamed to say it now, but there's sometimes I'm like, you need to go home. You know, like I need a break for a minute. But that's the kind of kid that he is. He knew what he wanted. He knew what he was focused on. And I wish, honestly, I wish I could take more credit for what he did. It's the kind of kid that he is. I just kind of helped him along the path. So Josh now is working for his second year at Safe Harbor Marina, right up the road, the North Yard here. He was just talking to me on the way in, but I said we got to hurry up, you know, about a different job prospect that he has coming up now. He'll be attending Mass Maritime Academy, where he wants to study marine engineering. So he's got a bright future ahead of him. But he did an outstanding job out there. Kind of a surreal moment when you're in this crowd in this arena with, 16, 17,000 people, and his contest was the third to last. So they're calling up Marine Service finalists, and all of a sudden his name got called. We're looking at each other and we didn't know what to do. I've never had anybody in finals at nationals. He's like, what do I do? What do I do? I said, get down in the front, get going to the front, hurry up, and he's like, which way do we know? I said, I don't know, just get down there. And then they called the finalists and they called the third place and we're like, oh, that's not him. So he's one of two, and then they called the second place, and then all of Warwick and Rhode Island just erupted because we knew that he was first. So just a surreal moment, but well-deserved. He put all the time and the effort into it, and just an outstanding student, like Mr. Kane said. It was great. So,
Congratulations.
and this, I believe, is your certificate.
Sure is. Yay. That's great. It is warm in here. It's because it's so warm outside. There.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much. All right, I just got to say it. I'm proud of that on just so many levels, right? From the student, from the teacher. The teacher sees something in the student saying, this might work for you. And obviously it works. I mean, I couldn't be more, I think I can speak for my colleagues. No one could be more proud of the accomplishment and then everything that creates the accomplishment. So my hat's off to you. Okay, next on the agenda is public comment on agenda items. There's a limit of one comment per person. Individual comments are respectfully requested to be limited to 2 minutes. Please try to limit to 2 minutes. Public comment should not exceed 30 minutes in total, but the chair at his discretion may extend such time in limited circumstances. Chair may also suspend comment if he deems it necessary. Comment shall not contain inappropriate or salacious remarks. So all I ask is just announce your name when you approach the microphone. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Darlene Netko, lifelong resident of Warwick, graduate of Warwick Public Schools, homeowner, taxpayer, voter, teacher now going on 34 years in Warwick, 36 overall, subject of English at the high school level, and president of the Warwick Teachers Union. And I want to offer my congratulations to Chris Bianco and Josh Howard. They obviously are examples of how great our education system here in Warwick is. He went to the national level. He won a gold medal under the tutelage of his teacher. And I think the last few meetings now, we've been honoring both teachers and students in this district for various awards. And there's a presentation tonight on the iReady, the end of the year iReady scores. And I believe one of the statements in that presentation is it's time to change the narrative, and I couldn't agree more. It is time to change the narrative and not let other people write the narrative, because the truth is we have outstanding students in this district and we have outstanding teachers. And we have a lot of them. And it's time for people to recognize that and to stop, I want to choose my words carefully here, denigrating, we'll just go with denigrating the Warwick Public School System. And I also want to comment on the resolution about the Buttonwoods property, which is something, I enjoyed the history lesson that is in the resolution. And I am interested to know exactly where this land is, because I did not go and look up the plots or the plats. But I think it's great that this research was done and that the schools can turn it over to the city so the city can sell it. The land can be used, the city can get some money, and then hopefully turn some of that money over to the schools.
Yeah.
Because too often, along with the denigration of our school system, we get the schools are costing too much money, blah, 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 blah. Well, you know what? The schools cost more money because the schools are the largest department in the city. We have the most employees. We have all of the, the students, the buildings. Maybe the school system shouldn't have to pay for its own plowing and pay for its own upkeep and so on and so forth, and then maybe it wouldn't cost as much money. But I just wanted to say overall, we have great teachers here, we have a great school system, and I want people to know that. Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment? Okay, hearing none. Next, recommended actions. Approval of minutes of public session, May 30th and June 6th, 2023.
So moved?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Approval of minutes of executive session, May 30th and June 6th, 2023.
So moved?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Approval of warrants from July 11th, 2023.
So moved?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Announcements. Personnel is presented. Mrs. Ruggieri.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the school committee. Tonight I have just 2 retirements to put before you for a vote. We'd like to bid farewell to Lori O'Neill, a science teacher at Windman Middle School with 35 years of service, and Paula Murdink, English teacher at Windman with 22 years of service, giving a total of 57 years. So we thank them for their service and wish them well.
Motion to approve.
So moved?
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. I also have some resignations that require a vote. Ellen Tedeschi Moran, a teacher assistant SES at Windman. Jennifer Johnson, teacher assistant intermediate AAP at Lippet. Stephen Carter, special education department head at Pilgrim. Stephanie Frazier, science teacher at Windman. Samuel Ashley, science teacher at Pilgrim. Max Orner, elementary special educator at Scott Cedar Hill. Tiffany Beltram, instructional integrationist at Title I schools. And Martin Susla, elementary principal at Lippet. And I also have a correction to make. I had a mispronunciation in a name last month, so I would like to correct that for the record. I would like to acknowledge Mary Mason for retirement. Last time I said Manson instead, so I apologize for that. She has 30 years with the district. So I do need a vote for those resignations.
Okay. Motion to approve resignations as presented.
So moved?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And the final announcement for a vote is an unrestricted leave of absence for Amanda Iovino, a teacher assistant in the AAP program at Welk.
So moved?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And now we have many people to welcome. You may recognize a few of the names that I just read for resignations. They're going to be returning in other capacities. So we'd like to welcome Stephen Carter as the Assistant Director of Special Services. Whitney Walker, the Project Aware Mental Health Coordinator. Sarah Lapointe, Assistant Principal of Climate and Culture, and I believe Sarah is here this evening. Welcome, Sarah. Tiffany Beltram is now the MLL Coordinator for the district. Megan McGuire, the Assistant Principal of Climate and Culture at Pilgrim. Karen Kinder, Elementary Secretary at Greenwood. Alan Machado, Helper Custodian in the Maintenance Department. Susan Elner, NISS Clerk Floater in the Green Administration Building. Corey Boudreau, Master Mechanic in the Maintenance Department. Denise Ahern, Early Childhood Coordinator at Welk. Morgan Burke, PE Health APE at Wyman, Lippett, Scott, and Norwood. Melody Kozlowski as the Speech Language Pathologist at Welk. 2 occupational therapists, Stephanie Langevin and Shannon Fitzsimon. Stephanie will be at Hoxie Tollgate, Drumrock, and Park, and Shannon will be at Welk. Kara Coogan, social worker at Park. Alexandria Williams, special ed IASE teacher at Park. Vanessa Wilcox, special ed SES teacher at Tollgate. Martin Susla, elementary teacher, grade 1 at Scott. Bethany Chappelle, special ed grade 4 co-taught at Park. Samantha Deal, social worker at Greenwood Robertson. Dana Delory, special educator, IASE Vets. Abigail Scheidler, special educator, grade 3 co-taught at Oakland Beach. Carly Evans, special educator, grade 6 IASE at Vets. Dylan DePalma, special educator, IES at Tollgate. Lori DeFusco, special educator, AAP at Welk. And Natalie St. Louis, elementary special educator for the district. I just would like to welcome everyone. We've been very lucky with the caliber of candidates that we've seen come in, and we're thrilled to have them join our district. So thank you.
Thank you.
Besides Mrs. Lapointe, is anyone mentioned here?
Yes, Lori DeFusco is here.
Welcome. Congratulations. Mr.
Martin
Susla,
is
I
here,
see him
too.
back there.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Okay, you have anything else, Mrs. Ruggieri? Coaches?
Coaches as presented in executive session, my
Okay.
apologies.
Thank you. Okay, next, donations and correspondence. Donation for $800 from NWN Carousel to the Warwick Area Career Tech Center for the golf tournament. We thank them very much. The golf tournament's a big fundraiser for CTC. Next is the adoption of policies. Dr. Cecil.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chair, school committee members, Superintendent Danbrook. Our first policy tonight for a first read is policy ING, therapy dogs in school. This is a newly developed policy with a set of guidelines that we will follow when we have the offer of bringing in a therapy dog into our building. We've, over the past few years, myself included, have had trained therapy dogs that have been requested to come into the buildings. And with more and more therapy dogs coming in, and we know the benefits of having therapy dogs, we really felt very strongly that it was time that we had a policy that set the parameters and the guidelines for bringing these dogs into the building. That include things like having insurance, making sure they're up to date on shots and are groomed, and what to do if a child is allergic to the dog or afraid of the dog, how long the dog can be in the school, what the, getting permission slips,
today is worth $3,801.59. So
Actually,
still a
less than I
bargain.
thought, yeah.
So, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you very
Kravitz.
much.
Okay, we're going to do two presentations. We're going to go to agenda item 1 now. First is end-of-year iReady presentation by Dr. Schultz, and then discussion and presentation on DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion from Dr. Cecil, Ms. Netco, and Ms. Backus. So we're going to go down there for a little bit.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Dr. Lisa Schultz, and I'm the Curriculum Director for Warwick Public Schools. It is my distinct pleasure to go over some very exciting results for you this evening, not only for iReady, but also for some PSAT and SAT data that we got at the end of the year for the high schools as well. So let's just dig right in. If this will work, hold on. Am I doing something wrong? Nope, I need to turn it on. Okay, there it is. So I wanted to go over quickly the current national trends. And this is something that just came out. This was published in EdWeek and in other sources similar to that. And you can see that there was a massive difference between this past year. We count the 2022 scores as the most recent because the 23 scores don't come in until the fall typically. And so you can see that over the course of 1 year, the scores dropped in reading across the nation by 5 points. And for the first time ever in mathematics, they dropped by 7 points. You can see that reading has kind of stayed about the same, little bits of ups and downs, but mathematics has typically been on the upswing. And so for it to drop that far made us think and surmise maybe our scores are going to look the same. Right, Mrs. Cousineau?
But guess what?
But guess what? They don't,
We have a surprise.
everybody. We have a surprise for you. So how are we doing, K-8 and Warwick? Well, we've had a solid growth trend over the last 3 years for many different reasons. One of the reasons we think is the addition of our interventionists, full-time interventionists that our amazing citizens of Warwick have helped to fund. So thank you, everybody. And we have found this year that we have greater gains in math than in language arts. Very strange how with the new math interventionists that we have this gain. Maybe not so strange. I'm just really excited, so I'm going to try to tone down the cheesiness, everybody, but let's move forward. You can see that for the past 3 years, our scores have gone up. Upward trend, while other states in the nation have seen a downward trend. Other cities in Rhode Island have seen a downward trend because of the effects of COVID-19. However, we're not seeing that. We're seeing some really exciting things. You can also see the gap closure between the ELA scores and the math, which is represented in the red. We're only 4 points behind in mathematics now for the first time. So we can see that this is, and just keep in mind, this is our iReady scores. This is not our state diagnostic data. I did want to mention that, but there is a high correlation between how the students do on this assessment and how they will do on the RICAS assessment that we'll get news of how they did in the fall. You can see here that for ELA, for reading, we had a 26% improvement on grade levels since the beginning of the year, and we had 11% decrease in red for students that are really struggling. You can see that that yellow band, that's for the students that are almost there. They're almost in the green, and that has really shrunk down as students have moved. That 26% moved up into the green, and a lot of the red students moved up into the yellow band. And we can see that our students hit 123% of their annual typical growth. We want to see 100%, so the fact that they hit 123% is amazing, and that's what helps explain the gap closure that we see right there. Mm-hmm.
I also want you to focus on the green, the green with the black lines through it, because we went from 16% to 39% for our students who are mid or above grade level, so I think that that's cause for celebration as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mrs. Cousineau. Let's look at math. You could see that we had similar progress where we reached where we needed to be and then went above that. And you can see also something similar where we have, however it's higher, 37% improvement on grade level and the 13% decrease in students that were really struggling in the red band. You can now see, this is a really interesting chart. This is our quadrant chart for student growth. And so if we look how our students did with placement in reading from the fall to the end of the year assessment, you can see that every single school, those dots represent all of our schools, our elementary schools and our middle schools. Every single one of them is represented in the higher two quadrants, which say that they might have low performance, but they have high growth. Or they have high performance and high growth. And you can see that it looks like for the first time, most of our schools are in that upper right-hand quadrant, which is where we want them all to be, which is a lot of cause for celebration. If we look at math, you can see that there are 3 schools right on the cusp of being in the upper quadrant, but we have some really high flyers for mathematics, and everyone is in the right area, which is where we need them to be in order to close gaps. We can also see, this is a great chart that we got from iReady, our partners, and you can see how year after year they moved, the entire band moved, and we have students that were able to keep all of the learning that they had last year and then improve upon it. And so we've seen that now for 3 years straight. And then how did the district's placements compare to our benchmark? So this is really powerful. The district, how we did in Warwick, is represented on the right-hand column, and we are higher than both the state and the national average in reading. Higher. This is amazing and definitely a cause for celebration. And like I said, national norm, Rhode Island is not the highest in the state for, not the highest in the nation for educational attainment, basically, but what we're seeing here is that Warwick is doing better than Rhode Island, and so we're in competition with other states now, like Connecticut or Massachusetts, that are ranked higher than Rhode Island, but Warwick is right up there with them. Same thing for mathematics. You can see that we're right there doing an excellent job, and we definitely are higher than the state norm, and we are close to the national average right now. All right, I wanted to do some shout outs. We have all of our schools made amazing growth, as you can see. There was not one school that didn't make the 100% growth in both reading and math. And so we have Park, which is leading our district right now. They're #1 in math scores, #1 in math growth. Scott School, #2 math scores reading. You can read through, but just shout outs to Warwick, Neck, Norwood, Greenwood, Cedar Hill, and Windman Middle School. It is really tough to move middle school students. They were #1 in the district in reading growth and #2 in math growth. 140% for reading growth. This is phenomenal, and we haven't seen movement like this in our middle schools in a really long time. So big shout out to Windman and to the other schools and for everyone that made this happen. Keeping this in mind, this is something that Ms. Netko talked about earlier, and I'm asking you it's time to change the narrative. And so anytime that you hear someone say something like, oh, I don't know about the Warwick schools, I read all these things on Facebook, I challenge you to say something and say, wait a minute, that's not true. I just went to this presentation and I saw all this data saying that we're higher than the nation and we're definitely higher than the other districts in Rhode Island. So we're not what you're saying. We're better than that. And so we're going to continue to grow. We have amazing teachers. We are so fortunate that there are a lot of districts that are losing teachers. You heard Mrs. Ruggieri this evening talk about all the teachers that are coming to Warwick because they're hearing the good things that we're doing. So it's time to change the narrative to something positive. I also wanted to give a shout out to our high schools. We have scores that are steady from last year, but cause of celebration, we have 69% of our students on the PSAT that are meeting the evidence-based reading and writing score. Writing has always been something that students struggle in, so for us to have that high score is something to really celebrate. In addition, we have SAT results. They're pretty steady. However, when you look at the cohort of students, Tollgate went up by 53 points if you look at how they did from PSAT time to SAT time, and Pilgrim's up by 45 points, but overall Pilgrim's a little bit higher by about 7 points. That's about all that I have, and I'm going to turn it over to the DEI committee, but I just wanted to thank you for your time this evening and for listening to the great news that we had to share.
And you're going to put this on the website.
And it's going to be on the website, and hopefully in the Beacon very soon. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. We are thrilled to be here tonight representing the Policy Committee with Mrs. Bacchus, Darlene Netko, and myself to do an introductory conversation around DEI, otherwise known as diversity, equity, and inclusion. We began this journey of discussing this about 5 or 6 months ago on the Policy Committee. Policy Committee, by the way, has membership of administration, the teachers union, the WISE union. We have principals on the committee, we have a parent on the committee, and we have a school committee. So it's a very wide representation of different interest groups representing the total Warwick community. And so we started to engage in this conversation a good 5 or 6 months ago. And so we're here tonight to present what we've been talking about. So I'm going to turn it over now to Karen.
So in talking about DEI, the first thing we need to do is to understand the difference between diversity, equity, and inclusion. And there's a quote here, "A lot of different flowers make a bouquet." And isn't that true?
All right, and to answer the question, why now? Why are we talking about DEI? Well, a teacher approached me earlier in the school year and asked if the district had a DEI policy. And as you know, I've been around a long time, and I've been on many policy committees over the years, and I did not recall one. So I called Ann Cecil, and I said, do we happen to have one? And no, we did not. So that started the conversation with the policy committee. What do they look like? Should we have one? What districts do have one? And it says the policy committee started to research what other districts in Rhode Island and around the U.S. were doing, but really it was Dr. Cecil, I think, doing most of the research. But she created a whole Google Doc folder in which she put a number of documents from around the country with links upon links to different other documents and data and research and so on. I think the most impressive or the most complete system we found was in Burbank, which Dr. Cecil will probably talk about in detail later. We did find that other districts in Rhode Island are working on this policy. If you go on the Providence Public School website, you will find that they have an extensive DEI department with policy and so on. As a teacher was asking me, there was actually a parent at one of the elementary schools who had started a DEI committee to talk about equity issues specific to that school and community. So the time was right for our policy committee to kind of delve into what is DEI, what does it look like, what should we do?
And so what have we learned? As Darlene mentioned, we looked at a couple of different districts. 2 of them in particular were very rich in what they had been doing and had been doing it for quite a while. One was Burbank, California. The other was in Exeter, New Hampshire. And so I actually had a chance to speak with both superintendents of those districts and had asked them the same questions. How'd you get started? How did you organize yourselves? What stumbling blocks did you come across? Did it cost any money? You know, what can we expect? What suggestions do you have for us? and so on and so forth. And so what we learned in speaking to them and in our experience so far is that there is no one way to approach DEI, that each of those districts approached it differently. It's a continuous journey that's going to continue over time and it's going to change over time. It's definitely messy because there's no one way, there's no clear agenda of how this is done. So for people that need to have things organized, it doesn't work that way, at least initially, until people who decide to join in the work have enough time for discussion that they identify what the topics are that the district needs to take a closer look at in relation to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So it involves a lot of active listening and being non-judgmental. The work absolutely has to be supported by the superintendent and the school committee. It's not going to go anywhere if it does not have the support of the superintendent and the school committee. And no one group can decide who can or who should be involved in the work. In other words, it's not up to the administration to appoint a committee, nor is it up to the school committee to appoint a committee. You can't appoint people. This has to be voluntary by people who are interested in engaging in the work. And in Burbank, in fact, they sent out a Google form into the community, and they started with about 50 people who signed up. And in fact, they have a little YouTube video that highlight each person who said, I joined the committee because, and everyone had their own reason and very different reason for wanting to get involved. And now they're down to about 25, and they've organized themselves in a different way. Same thing in Exeter. It was voluntary, but they did it at each school. And each school reached out to their own school community to see who was interested in coming aboard and starting to have discussions. So again, it can't be pushed upon a person. They have to, want to join. There is no set agenda. It flows with what the group's working on, and the group decides the work to be done, who's going to do it, and why it's important. There's no one person who can say, we have to do this, because it's reflective of what the group believes is important. And it's going to be different. In a district like Burbank, they have a very different population than we do. So what their needs are going to be different than us. Same thing in Exeter. So again, that's why there's no one size fits all to this work. Oh, and it's still me. So do we need a plan? Yes. And why do we need a plan? Well, in RIDE's strategic plan for the state, they include diversity, equity, and inclusion in their plan. And in our own plan, we actually have touched upon DEI in a couple of our indicators. For example, adopting culturally relevant, integrated, aligned K-12 curriculum across all subjects that's engaging and responsive to all students' needs. And we also have another indicator that says create and implement a district educational equity plan that includes tiered supports for all learners. So between RIDE and our own selves, it's really sending us in this direction that it's time for us to start engaging in this work and developing a plan, which eventually I would think is going to turn into a policy, but it's going to probably be more than just a policy.
Okay, so along with DEI, often comes certain assumptions or so forth. And so we wanted to state right from the start, these are our understandings going forward. We're not teaching diversity. We're not teaching equity. We're not teaching inclusion, and we're not teaching critical race theory. We know these are buzzwords out there to get to inflame communities and so on and so forth. I did a lot of research into critical race theory to prepare for today. I'm not going to bore you all, but keep in mind this started back in the 60s and 70s as a legal theory in the law and in law schools. And over time, it's really a college level course, and it involves philosophies such as those by Jacques Derrida. And who is talking about Jacques Derrida these days in postmodernism? Not people in the K through 12 public schools. So let's just approach this process calmly and not buy into inflammatory accusations about what we might be doing. And Dr. Cecil included a quote on this slide also. Inclusivity means not just we're allowed to be there, but we are valued. I've always said smart teams will do amazing things, but truly diverse teams will do impossible things. Claudia Brindwoody. And obviously, when we use quotes, we want to think about what they mean. We want to value everybody. We're a public school system. We accept everybody. We educate everybody. We meet the kids where they are and take them where they need to be. And we want to work together and embrace diversity and embrace everybody's differences and different opinions. That earlier quote talked about making a bouquet. So we need different flowers to make a beautiful bouquet. We need truly diverse teams to do impossible things. And what we would be looking for going forward is to have such a team to work on a policy or a plan or whatever fits best for Warwick.
And we're starting to see not only amazing, but impossible things happen here in Warwick. Things that we never thought even 5 years ago are happening now. And that's exciting. And we'd like to see that continue. So what do we hope to achieve? We hope to achieve a culturally relevant curriculum. Something that's relevant for everyone, that makes sense, that people are comfortable with. Raising student voice and sense of belonging. Studies show us that the more a student has their own voice and the more they feel that sense of belonging in the school community, the better they do. Family and community engagement. Of course, we want families to be a part of their students' lives, and we want them to engage with the schools and with other parents, with the entire community. It's a plus. It's a plus plus. We want workforce diversity. We don't have a lot of diversity in our workforce right now. As much as we try, we just don't have the applicants at this point at the level that we'd like to see. But it's coming, and it will become more diverse as Warwick becomes more diverse. And then ongoing professional and personal learning, which if we're lifelong learners, this is something that's important for all of us, for our educators, for our students, for their families. It's a win-win. Next steps. Our next steps are to create a Google form to post on the Warwick Public Schools Facebook page, inviting people who are interested to sign up, to come and check this out, to hopefully maybe think about becoming a part of this in one way or another. The superintendent or her designee will hold the first of several meetings of the group until all voices have been heard, much like Burbank and Exeter and different places did. We want to see where people are coming from because there is no scheduled subject. There are no scheduled subjects or items that need to be discussed. It comes from the group that's involved in this DEI. The outcome of meetings will determine the next steps, such as creating a district committee or individual school site committees, or both, or determining topics for subcommittee work. And then, of course, equity audits to determine if we're meeting those standards, if we're meeting those goals, going beyond them, or if we need to look at something different. Thank you.
And just to piggyback on that really quickly before we close this out, both districts, Burbank and Exeter, recommended doing equity audits. So that may well be a step that we end up taking. But we end with this quote: "Diversity is a fact, equity is a choice, inclusion is an action, belonging is an outcome." And so we hope tonight that we've started the conversation, started everybody thinking, and hope to see this grow into whatever it becomes. So we'll entertain any questions, and thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Schultz, Ms. Cousineau, Dr. Cecil, Ms. Netko, Ms. Backus. Any questions or comments from anyone from the committee? Mr. Gallagher.
Mr. Chair, thank you. First, I just want to applaud Dr. Cecil and everyone else who's involved in the major increase we've seen in the performance of our schools. That goes out to all the administrators as well as the educators at our schools that are really just executing and getting the job done, especially when we're coming out of that learning loss period that we were all fearful of. So great job with that. What a stat, right? Higher than state and national average for reading. That's incredible. And I'm super proud of the district and the Warwick Public School Systems for achieving that. And I really echo your sentiments on the math interventionists. We definitely need to continue to invest in that area and retain those positions moving forward, so that way we can continue to see that growth in the area of math. And I really like how you mentioned changing the narrative. Sometimes when I get a couple minutes to decompress and kind of flip through the pages on the internet, to see some of the fallacies out there. Things like we give the schools so much money and they're underperforming. Now to show this to them and say that's not factually accurate, and dispute the correlation between how much money is given to the school system and our overall performance. Right? They don't go together like people assume they should. You can't just throw money at a problem. So it's great to see the improvements in the performance. I would just note that, continuous improvement, it's a journey, right? There's no end date, and we've got to continue to move on up, and we're certainly trending in the right direction. So nice job to all of you, and great presentation. And then for the DEI presentation, I certainly applaud all those that were a part of that initiative to get it off and going. Dr. Cecil, Ms. Netko, and Ms. Backus, that was a great presentation. With so much hate and divisiveness out there in our communities these days and within our own schools, not with just kids, but also adults. We see it with adults. And so to have this DEI initiative help break down barriers and have people embrace others' differences or cultural backgrounds or whatnot, it's great that we're trending in that direction with the DEI initiative. I like how the objectives have us evolve as a school district to mirror the evolution of our community and the changing in the demographics of our communities. I don't think anyone could dispute Warwick's demographics have changed significantly over the past several decades. So it's nice that the objectives kind of mirror that change in our demographics. And then just, Dr. Cecil, in your research with the equity audits, have you seen those to be performed internally by members of the DEI team, or were those, did they leverage third parties to come in and kind of give an objective view?
We have, the districts shared with me different audits that we can use ourselves, and then probably contract out to have the data disaggregated and analyzed for us. So there's surveys, it's actually surveys, and there are several of them that we could choose from and distribute to anybody who would like to do one, and then take all that data back. We have somebody from Bryant University who's done data disaggregation for us before for our district strategic plan, and they did a really, really quality job, and they could do the same with this data and break it down for us and start to, form the big ideas for us.
Great, thank you. And if you just wouldn't mind sharing with us some of that research, if you want to send it to us directly via email or through Teresa, I'd really appreciate seeing what's kind of forthcoming. So that'd be really great to see.
I'll just share the
Thank you.
folders with you.
Thank you.
Ms. Kirby-Tapman.
Hi. With the equity audit, are we committed to an equity audit? Like, if we're truly going to make a DEI committee, are we really going to make it diverse? And are we committed to that, to make sure we have a completely diverse, so this can actually prosper in that way? Yes, no?
No, because it's voluntary. It's completely voluntary, so we can't say, well, we want you, you, and you, because you represent this, this, and this. So it's really voluntary. So that's one of the things, that's one of the reasons that you would do an audit.
Right.
To
that's what I'm
look
saying.
at, are
Can we
you
commit to that? Because how can we have a diverse committee if it's not diverse?
How can we have a diverse committee if we don't have a real diverse population? But when you look at the definition of diversity, there's different, you can look at different levels, different diversities within groups, things like that. So, but it's voluntary. So what are you aiming to do? And is it diverse? Is the group, is it diverse enough to make things work? And what are people looking to work on?
But I mean, that's kind of the same thing. That's what I mean. Is it going to be diverse enough that voices will be heard and represented?
Well, all voices will be heard, period.
Will be
So
represented.
whoever wants to be part of this conversation, their voices will be heard. I don't envision it ever being closed off, that if somebody hears about this after, say, the first time that the superintendent meets with the group, and somebody says, oh, I'd really like to be part of that group, of course, come join us. So I think maybe by word of mouth, that group is going to change. Now, some people might get there and after the first meeting say, okay, I've said my piece, that's all I wanted to do, so long, I'm not interested in committing to the work. What both districts told us very clearly was, for the first year, do small things that are achievable. And if the equity audit is too big for us to do in the first year, and the committee thinks that that's just, too much for us in that first year, and they really want to just focus in on getting focused, that may end up being what it is. So, we take the recommendations that we've had from all these people who've been doing this now for 4 or 5 years, and take the lessons that they've learned and are sharing with us, and go with it. And so that's why we said it's messy. It's not clear cut. And so we can recommend stuff. We can say we'd like this, but in the end, we start by forming a committee and start listening to what that committee has to say about their thoughts on diversity, equity, inclusion in Warwick, and move from there.
So I think it would be nice if you, when you start to go forward, that you actually have a diverse group that has a voice for, instead of it not being and just assuming what needs to be involved.
We hope that it will be a diverse group. And I think it will, you have to look at all different levels of diversity.
Right.
And will it change and will it grow over time as the population changes? And, you know, of course it will.
The other thing is, we also talk about inclusivity,
Inclusivity.
thank you, to all. I hate speaking on this.
That's okay.
So this is a hot ticket item, so are we going to listen to the parents that don't really want completely DEI in the curriculum? Do they get a say? Do both sides get a say?
DEI is not a curriculum. It's
But you
not
said you want
in
to make
a
sure that it's
curriculum.
part of the curriculum.
No, we said that curriculum is culturally relevant. So when new curriculums, for example, I'm sure Dr. Schultz can speak to this, when Wit and Wisdom was developed, the cultural relevance is that all nationalities or a variety of nationalities are represented in the stories that children read, that different genders are in the stories that children read. You know, that's how things are culturally relevant, that you're not just looking at one group of people and only looking at one group of people. That's what culturally relevant is. So
don't
it's
think
not
I don't
teaching
think that's an issue.
DEI. We're not teaching it. We
It's-
want to make that clear. We're not teaching it. We're
don't-
looking at our
right.
textbooks. We're looking at the curriculum that we've written up and looking to see that what we're teaching is culturally relevant, that we're teaching. And to answer your question about listening to voices, we're listening to all voices. That's the whole point. We want to listen to all voices. Everybody needs to be heard.
Great.
And that's the whole point.
Good.
Ms. Hazelwood, did you have, Ms. Kirby tapping you, are you?
Yeah.
You good? Ms. Hazelwood, did you have something?
She spoke of it.
Okay. Thank you. I'll stay on the DEI thing. Hats off to you guys, I have no problem with that. And Ms. Necko, you referenced that sometimes this could be inflammatory, incendiary, just those three letters. I would just say publicly, if anybody thinks it's gonna take the culture wars into the Warwick schools, they got another thing coming, because that's not gonna happen. With respect to the achievement thing, Dr. Schultz, I couldn't be more pleased. I think Ms. Backus and I have been here a long time, and I've said on many occasions that I think Warwick should be in the top 3 to 5 districts in the state, and I had a lot of reasons for that. If anyone's ever read Good to Great by Jim Collins, he has a thing called BHAGs, Big, Hairy, Audacious Goals. And I think you have set them, and as part of that book is, as you develop them, you develop the flywheel effect. So once it starts to move, it keeps moving. It's a long journey. It's not something you do in 2 years or 3 years. And to Mr. Gallagher's point, continuous improvement is you never get there. But I am beyond pleased with the results so far and the dedication up and down the chain throughout the district, across all disciplines. I couldn't be more pleased. And you said, we're better than that, and that's kind of a cool slogan. But I'll leave that up to you guys. So thank you. Okay. Next item, discussion update, FY23 monthly financial report. Mr. Bowl, welcome.
Good evening. I distributed the June 2023 fiscal report to everyone, so if you have any questions, I'd be happy to field them.
Any questions from the committee? Nope. I have no questions either, Mr. Bowl. I'll just announce that lunch debt as of June 30th is now $146,608.27. Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda, discussion action. Building Committee is requesting the approval from the School Committee to appoint Mr. Brandon Bowl to the School Building Committee. This is required by RIDE. RIDE requires on a school building committee that there be a local financial or fiscal representative. Historically, it's been the business manager for the school, so with Mr. McGrath's leaving us, Mr. Bowl will fill that slot. So we just need school committee approval, and then we will turn that letter over to RIDE, the official action.
Motion to appoint Mr. Bowl.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries. Welcome aboard, Mr. Bold. Next, discussion, number 5, discussion action, discipline of WTU employee.
Motion to uphold the superintendent's recommendation.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries. Next agenda item, discussion action on WTU one-year contract.
Motion to uphold the contract?
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Yep.
Shouldn't it be, not to be pejorative, but shouldn't it be motion to approve?
The one-year
The
contract.
The
one-year
1 year, that's what I said.
contract.
That's what I said, 1 year.
Okay.
The 1 year tentative, motion to approve 1 year tentative agreement, right, Ms. Andrews? Yep. And it's seconded, it's moved, so all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next item, discussion bid award. Number 7, bid award athletic supplies and equipment for the 23-24 school year. Mr. Ricks.
Good evening, Chairman Testa and the rest of the committee. I just brought before you tonight our annual bid for sports equipment. That's tennis balls, baseballs, football helmets, whatnot. We sent it out to bid. We had a number of bidders. We've had a lot of success with 2 of the companies that have supplied equipment, and if you had time to look at the bids, it was almost split on the cost, so we felt that we should award the bid to both, and it's in the district's best interest to save money.
Motion to adopt.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes, just.
Mr. Galligan.
I just want to commend you on kind of coming up with a hybrid solution here for cost savings purposes. So that's great to see that we're getting creative. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Ricks, thank you. We've used these companies before, right? Grogan and BSN?
Yes, we've been through, Grogan's had it a number of years, but BSN has had it in the past, and both companies have been reliable.
Yep.
And
Okay.
so,
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
thank you.
Next item, discussion action, bid award alternative learning program services. Mrs. Barber and Mr. Allenback.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the school committee. What you have before you is the results of an RFP the Special Education Department put out to obtain a provider for a therapeutic alternate education program. We received proposals from 2 companies. A committee evaluated the proposals utilizing a rubric with specific criteria. Based upon the bid tabulation results before you, the committee recommends awarding Rhode Island Alternate Academy the bid. The Special Education Department is requesting approval of the proposal from Rhode Island Alternate Academy to provide alternative education services beginning the 2024-2025 school year.
Move approval.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Galligan.
First one is for Attorney Hennius. This is more of a question, procedural question. In speaking with Dave and Jen earlier today, they brought up some good points. If we approve this bid award right now, would they come back before us with the final contract?
Yes, they would.
Okay, thank you for that. I just would encourage my colleagues to support this after speaking with Dave and Jen today for a little while, which I really appreciate you guys speaking, rather impromptu this afternoon. They've got a lot of great benefits that are coming out of this vendor change, and I think it's going to be really beneficial for not only our school district, but those students. So nice job to both of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comment from the school committee? Okay. Mrs. Barber, Mr. Allenback, thank you. The evaluation criteria was pretty stark. So, and did you say this was for the 24-25 school year? Okay. Okay. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Next item, number 9, contract award Vex Robotics. This is Dr. Schultz.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everyone, again. This contract award is for Vex Robotics. There is a slight misprint here, but Vex Robotics is actually a budgeted expense that is for the robotics program for the middle school. we'll be starting with kind of sharing the robotics equipment between vets and Windman. The two robotics instructors worked together to come up with a really awesome plan to start to phase out the outdated Lego kits that they have for robotics and bring in VEX, which is what our high schools use for competition. So our kids are going to have an even bigger leg up as they move forward. So just requesting your approval on this.
Move approval.
Second.
Any discussion? Dr. Ost, these are the ones that are replacing the very old materials, right? That were
Yeah,
from the budget?
they're starting to fail,
Yeah,
the Lego
okay.
kits. They're still workable, but
but
they
this was-
definitely need, yeah, go ahead.
We can't get any parts for the EV3 robotics kits that we have right now because they're been discontinued. There are no parts, so we need to move in this direction.
Can't teach the students without the stuff, so, okay.
And this is going to be awesome.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Next item, number 10, discussion action contract award Amazon, open purchase order for purchasing textbooks for non-public Warwick resident students. Dr. Cecil. No.
I'll
Oh, yeah, Dr.
entertain
Cecil.
any questions. This is budgeted, and we're required by law to provide our private schools, Warwick students, with textbooks that are on the state-approved textbook list.
Move approval.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 11, discussion action contract award Panorama Education license fee. Dr. Cecil.
Yes, what you have tonight is the extension, I guess, let me just open this up so I get it correct, from Mrs. Murray, that we had a year 2 contract for Panorama, and the original contract had an additional 2.5 months. So she had it separated out so that we have a full year 2 contract and a separate contract to finish out the year with the 2.5-month contract. The 2.5-month contract is being paid for with the Project Aware grant, and the full year grant was being paid for with ESSER. So that's what we're asking approval for tonight.
Okay. Looking for a motion to approve?
Move approval.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, discussion action calendar update, Superintendent Danbrook.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the school committee, I received communication from the Rhode Island Department of Ed that there needed to be some minor changes to our calendar. When they first put out the RIDE calendar, they did not have the presidential primary day, so I added that in. It's April 2nd. So then I had to add a day at the end of the year. So instead of school ending on the 17th, it now ends on June 18th. Also, they wanted us to talk about professional development. We have 3 professional development days. They do not count for school days if you're using your professional development days for right to read. As you know, all of our teachers have to be trained in right to read, and there's a short timeline, so we do have to dedicate our professional development days for right to read. Also, they wanted it explained to parents and marked on the calendar that students are attending school less than 180 days due to that professional development.
Okay, this is an action item, so looking for a motion to approve.
Move approval.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none? All in
But
favor?
those,
Oh, sorry.
excuse me.
Go ahead,
Sorry.
Ms. Backus.
Those days, will there be other instruction offered?
No, because the teachers will be engaged in training all day. I'm sure they'll be sent work home to do.
That's what I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
like
yeah.
work, you know,
Yes, yes.
sent home that they'd have to
Correct.
address.
Any other comment? Hearing nothing, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next on the agenda is public comment. Second public comment Same rules, 2 minutes, 30 minutes total. Just state your name when you come up to the microphone.
I'm back. Just an addendum to the presentation about these scores. We even did better in the PSATs and SATs, but I just want to remind everyone, those tests are not proficiency tests. Among RIDE's many, many blunders, making those the state tests for high school is a pretty big one. You could go back decades in research, and which I won't bore you with, but when we're talking about like cultural awareness or stuff, many researchers have proven the cultural biases in those tests, among other problems. And so for our state to use those as the state test is really an abomination. Why they couldn't create RICAS for high school and have a continuum from the elementary to the middle to the high school is a mystery only RIDE can solve, but it's something RIDE needs to do. And then regarding the calendar, that Right to Read Act intended, I think, one thing, but RIDE twisted it into something else. And RIDE got the power to decide what made a teacher proficient and what made a teacher aware. And just as a reminder, all of our teachers in elementary, K through 5, and all of our special educators, K through 12, have to be what RIDE deems to be proficient. And our district chose letters as one of the RIDE-approved programs for K through 3 teachers, and now for grades 4 and 5 and K through 12, we have Reading Reimagined, which is a Rhode Island Federation of Teachers program that RIDE approved. And both programs are very time-consuming. Letters probably more so, but teachers are doing a lot of work on their own. These 3 PD days are not enough to provide teachers with the time they need to do all of this work, especially in letters. And, you know, again, shame on RIDE for making teachers' lives miserable when they didn't need to. We have, you know, teachers who are already certified, master's degrees in reading, had to do this. Certainly, if you wanted teachers coming out of school to have this training, then put it in the teacher training programs and have to, but already, teachers who've already been teaching 30 years or so, this really is an undue burden on them. And so how big of RIDE to allow 3 PD days? Thank you.
Hi, Caitlin Regan, special educator at Warwick Neck. I just wanted to clarify a little bit about the April PD day. I know originally it was on the RIDE calendar as PD on April 23rd, and then RIDE changed the PD day to statewide PD on April 2nd. Most other districts decided to take that April 2nd day as their PD day, so they changed their April 23rd day to April 2nd instead of just taking the day off and adding one to the end of the school year. So that would have been helpful for us. Also, I'm very excited to hear more about the Alternative Learning Academy that we agreed to, hoping to learn more information as that bid comes closer in our contract with them, if it's for all students or if we still have some options available to students who don't need just that, but it sounds like an exciting opportunity, so thank you.
Anyone else for public comment?
Hi.
Mrs. Cousineau.
I'm Mrs. Cousineau, elementary director, and I just wanted to, on behalf of the elementary office, thank Mr. Susela for his years of service as principal at Lippert. He's moving on to Scott School, first grade. I'm very excited about his next chapter, so I wanted to publicly acknowledge that.
Thank you. I think Mr. Susel has left, I think.
Excuse me,
Right? Okay.
Mr. Tester,
Ms. Hazelwood,
may I say something?
absolutely.
Okay. I wanted to thank Kevin Oliver and his team for the fantastic job they did preparing for the graduation ceremonies. They had to do it 2 days. Everything got moved around in the rain, and they rose to the occasion, and it was wonderful. I just wanted to thank them publicly and thank the WISE Union also for what they did. They were fantastic. So thank you.
Agreed. Okay, future meetings. Warwick School Building Committee actually is meeting tomorrow at 7:30, which was announced at the last meeting. And also, the August meeting will be August 2nd at 7:30. The next monthly school committee meeting is August 8th, 2023 at 7 p.m. And the policy subcommittee meeting will be September 6th, 2023 at 4 p.m. There being no other business for this committee, I seek a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. We're adjourned. Thank you.